There are subtle signs that actually prove if you're doing well financially, even if it doesn't feel that way. And in today's video, we're going to discuss what these signs are, how you can figure out if they currently apply to you or not, and if they don't apply to you, we can talk about how you can quickly achieve financial well-being. The first sign that shows me that you're doing well financially that is often overlooked is that you're not trying to signal your wealth, you're just simply building it quietly. My favorite thinker, Naval Ravikant, actually has a 3-hour podcast on how to get wealthy, and in that podcast, he famously says that building wealth is a positive sum game. When you start to signal your wealth, that becomes a zero-sum game where there are winners and there are losers. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
Status, on the other hand, is a zero-sum game. It's a very old game. We've been playing it since monkey tribes, and it's hierarchical. Who's number one, who's number two, who's number three. And for number three to move to number two has to move out of that slot. So status is a zero-sum game.
In modern society, a status game is very much buying goods and signaling that you have wealth to others. So it's really prevalent on social media these days. You're going to see people flexing their watches, their cars, their new houses, etc. Most people who buy Lamborghinis are just buying it for the status. So for example, if you buy a Lamborghini, you're probably just trying to show to outsiders that you're successful enough to buy a $300,000 car. Now, there are obviously some people who buy the Lamborghini for the inner workings of the car because they appreciate the manufacturing or the craftsmanship, but I would say for the most part, most people are buying a Lamborghini because they want to show off. If a Lambo was as common as your everyday Honda Civic, I don't think there would be that many people trying to show off their Lamborghini on social media. And the thing is that we don't really know if that Lamborghini owner is doing well financially. That person could have just put a small percentage of money down and financed the rest of the Lamborghini, and they could be in debt for that car. I still don't think it's a great thing to be influenced by what we see online, and I think that many Americans are falling into this trap because right now the average car payment is like skyrocketing through the roof, and there are so many people that have car payments over $1,000 a month, with the average car selling for $67,000 and being financed for over 72 months. It seems like we're all seeking the wrong things these days, and instead I think we should be seeking freedom through building wealth so that we don't have to worry about a car loan that we can't really afford to impress people that we don't care about.
But really the reason you want wealth is because it buys you freedom. So you don't have to wear a tie like a collar around your neck. So you don't have to wake up at 7 a.m. and rush to work and sit in commute traffic. So you don't have to waste away your entire life grinding all the productive hours into a soulless job that doesn't fulfill you.
Now, in order to get the freedom that Naval Ravikant talks about, there are a few more signs that really show me that we have the fundamentals down of building wealth. You might already be doing these, so let me know down below if you are, but one sign that you're doing well financially and you're on the right track is that you have an emergency fund of at least $2,000. With 57% of Americans unable to afford a $1,000 emergency expense, I think having at least double that in a high yield savings or just a savings account for emergencies shows me that you're doing well financially. Ideally, you would have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up just so that it covers things that don't go your way, but I think that having at least $2,000 will get you ahead of most Americans. The next sign that I think that you're doing well financially is that you are able to meet your spending and your savings targets. That means you have your financial goals clearly defined, and that also means you probably have somewhat of a budget or some way to track your expenses. For example, if you make $75,000 a year and you know for a fact that your yearly expenses are $60,000 a year, you're making a plan for that difference of $15K. You're not only meeting your savings targets on a monthly basis, but you're probably also looking at the categories of your spend and trying to cut back where you think you're spending a little bit too much, as well as you're actively trying to seek more income. For me personally, I track all of my expenses in a Google Sheet. I call it my financial master sheet. I've actually made tons of videos on it before, but my favorite day at the end of every month is the 30th or the 31st, because that's when I can input all of my expenses for the month and see how well I did for that month and compare it to all the previous months. This template, by the way, if you'd like to download it and try it for yourself, will be down in the description below. It's going to be completely free to download. The best thing about tracking your expenses here is that not only is that going to show you that you're doing well financially, but you can also track how your expenses trend over many different years. So personally for me, I've been tracking my expenses for close to 9 years now, and I just know that my discretionary expenses on a month-to-month basis, they don't really change too much even as my income has gone up. That visually shows me that I am living below my means, and that's actually the next sign that you're doing well financially, is that you're living below your means. This is one of the #1 ways to increase your wealth over time, because if you live below your means, that naturally means that you're going to have more savings to invest regularly. You also get the flexibility and freedom of having different choices because of that. So maybe that means you make a career change, or maybe maybe that means you take more time off to travel without worrying too much about your finances. It also means that you can technically retire with less money, because the less money that you spend, that means the less money you need to actually get in your nest egg in order to live off of your investments comfortably. According to the 4% rule, which I've talked about on this channel many times, you can call yourself technically retired when you can live off of your nest egg and withdraw 4% of your nest egg every single year. So if your lifestyle costs $40,000 a year, technically you need a nest egg of $1 million, and you can withdraw from that in perpetuity because your investment returns generally make up for the amount that you're withdrawing. Now imagine your lifestyle costs $100,000 per year every single year. That means you're gonna need a lot bigger of a nest egg in order to withdraw at that 4% withdrawal rate. In fact, you're gonna need $2.5 million. So living below your means will bring down the burden of financial stress, and that also means you'll probably have some more money to eliminate any debt that you might have, which is the next sign that you're doing well financially, is that you're able to manage any types of debt. The average American has personal debt of around $21,800, and that excludes mortgages. And according to a recent study, most of that debt is coming on a credit card. Now, ideally, we're way below that number when it comes to our own debt balances, but if you do have some debt, if you're able to manage those payments every single month and not really miss any payments, that shows me that you're doing well financially. Okay, so when it comes to the fundamentals that we just talked about, there are 4 things that we're looking for. First, your emergency fund is taken care of. Second, you're meeting your spending and your savings targets. Third is that you have manageable debt, and fourth is that you're living below your means. Now, a lot of the fundamentals are gonna hinge upon how much you earn, and knowing how much you earn compared to the average salary in the United States can be helpful, but it might not be the right sign to look at, so let me explain here. The average salary in the US is about $59,000 individually, which comes out to about $28 an hour, but if we took that average salary and we put it in context of the global wealth perspective, we can actually see how well off the majority of us are. So look at this table. If you make less than $2 per day, you're considered, yes, in the bottom 20% of the world. But as you can see, if you make just between $10 and $20 per day, you're now in the middle 20%. And for the top 20%, you need to make $50 a day to be considered in the top 20% of the entire world. In fact, according to the World Bank, nearly half of the world lives on less than $5.50 per day. So sometimes perspective is all we really need to feel that we're doing well financially. But even that statistic might not actually make you feel financially well off. And in fact, what psychologists have actually found is that we often compare ourselves to others when we try to figure out where we stand within the whole money hierarchy thing. Comparison with the closest people in our circles is how we form our identity, and this is called social comparison theory. And for the most part, this isn't really super healthy. So when you start comparing yourself to others, you're kind of subjecting yourself to psychological torment. You may experience feelings of guilt or remorse for even not feeling good enough. So it's pretty funny because even if you make more than the average salary in the United States, or maybe you even make double the average salary in the United States, if all of your other friends are making tons of money, you might not actually feel financially well off. And you guys just have to know that this feeling will always exist. I know that this might sound crazy, but I've actually had lunch with someone who was worth over 9 figures, so at least $100 million, and he was even referencing his friends, and his friends were all billionaires. As we were having lunch, he just kind of slipped in, just very casually, "Yeah, I'm the poorest of all of my friends." That's literally what he said. He acknowledged that he was super grateful to be in the position that he was in, but the fact that he just even said that one line, "I'm the poorest of all my friends," really just goes to show you how much it's ingrained in our human nature to compare ourselves to others. Upon reflection, you realize that even at the elite levels of success, everyone is still doing some sort of comparison game with each other, and that's just never gonna go away. You have to fight human nature in order to not compare yourself to others, but if you're able to gauge your own financial success based on your own standards and beliefs, I think that this is a huge sign that you're doing well financially. Before we get into the final sign of today's video, I actually have a bonus section for you guys today. Because as I was making this video, I kind of realized like, okay, I already have all the signs that we're doing well financially, but there are actually some warning signs that you should be paying attention to. And if these warning signs ever show up in your financial life, they should be putting you on high alert because you might be off track. There are 3 major warning signs that I think we should really address here. And the first is that if you start to think talking about money or looking at your finances is getting boring, that might be a warning sign. Yes, it can be boring at times, and I definitely acknowledge that, but the people that are good with their finances generally stay pretty consistent with keeping track of it. So if it is getting boring for you, you might want to reward yourself with like a Starbucks or a really small treat every time you look at your finances or your statements. The second warning sign is that if you ever have to borrow money from anyone to make ends meet for yourself or even make your budget work that month, that is a warning sign that you might not have things under control. And the third warning sign here is that if your bills or your statements ever surprise you, I think that's a warning sign, because in general, you should know how much you're spending on a daily or weekly basis. And if you ever look at your bill or look at a statement cycle and you're like, oh my God, how did I spend this much money on XYZ? That's a warning sign that you might be getting a little bit off the rails. If you're able to avoid these warning signs, then you should be able to build your net worth easily over time. And this is the final sign that you're doing well financially in today's video. I'm going to use a YouTube analogy for you guys, and it really just shows you the power of perspective. So if we actually look at my YouTube views per month, if we look at the month of September 2023, for example, my worst viewed day here is September 13th with about 30,000 views. And overall, our views on this channel are a bit down since earlier this year. I'm not too worried about this yet. I know that YouTube is a game of ebbs and flows, but there are people out there that might think, oh my God, my views are down, my career is completely over, especially when it comes to YouTube. It's kind of a nerve-wracking thing. But instead, I just encouraged myself to zoom out. So what I did was I looked at my analytics from September of 2021, so over 2 years ago. And if I look at that month, for example, my highest viewed day 2 years ago was 21,183 views. So my highest day 2 years ago is still 33% lower than my lowest day of this month, this past September. That goes to show me that as long as we're trending in the right direction, we're doing fine in terms of YouTube, and net worth is going to be very similar in that regard. Your net worth may ebb and flow throughout the year. In fact, that's completely normal, especially if you have investments, but as long as it's trending in the right direction, I would argue that you're doing really well financially. Especially if you have a lot of these other signs that you're doing well financially in today's video, I feel like your net worth should be growing over time. Now, it's not really about doubling your money or quadrupling your money every single year. As long as it's consistent growth over time, that's all we care about. So I would actually say and argue that this is true for many things in life. If you're slowly building and growing towards something, that's going to be a really great thing. And remember, guys, Rome wasn't built in a day, and so we're going to use that same analogy here. Now, one way you can grow your net worth consistently is through investing. And if you guys are interested in investing, I have many videos on that, and I'll actually leave my how-to